Explain the auto-regulatory mechanism of GFR. So students, in the previous question we learned the glomerular filtration rate and it is around 125 milliliter per minute. Suppose if there is a variation in this amount, if the volume decreases or if the volume increases, the kidney has to maintain and bring it back to the normal. So this mechanism is called auto-regulative and this is done by the specialized cells in the nephron called juxtaglomerular apparatus. So students, now observe here. Here is a nephron. So if you observe the nephron structure, the renal corpuscle is touching to the distal convoluted tubule. So there are certain nephrons in the kidney whose renal corpuscle is in close proximity with the distal convoluted tubule of the same nephron. So the renal corpuscle is in close proximity with the distal convoluted tubule. So this is DCT. So they are in close proximal, they're in contact. So this kind of contact does not occur in all the nephrons. In only few nephrons we can see the corpuscles will be in contact with the DCT. Now at this junction there are two types of cells. One is juxtaglomerular cells. They are nothing but the modified smooth muscles present on the blood vessels, and macula densa. Now this macula densa is present on the DCT. This is macula densa. They are quite bigger when compared to the other cells. They are epithelial cells, larger in size. Now juxtaglomerular cells and macula densa together forms the juxtaglomerular apparatus. Now these cells control or regulate the amount of GFR. When there is a variation in the amount of GFR, these cells will secrete an hormone renin and this renin will maintain the amount of GFR. So now let us learn how renin maintains the amount of GFR. So the mechanism is called renin-angiotensin mechanism. So in which different kinds of proteins are involved. So mainly it is renin and angiotensin. Now both this protein controls amount of the GFR formed. So that is why the mechanism is called renin-angiotensin mechanism. So now we learned that the juxtaglomerular apparatus will secrete renin when the volume of GFR has been reduced. So when it is below 125 milliliter per minute. So when it is below this amount, the apparatus, juxtaglomerular apparatus, releases renin. Now this renin is released into the blood. So once the renin is released into the blood by the kidney, in the blood there is another protein called angiotensinogen. So this protein is generally released by the liver. Now renin acts upon angiotensinogen. This is an inactive form of protein and converts it into angiotensin 1. Now this angiotensin 1 will be taken to the lungs. In the lungs there is an enzyme, angiotensin converting enzyme. It is also called as ACE. Now this enzyme converts angiotensin 1 to angiotensin 2. So finally we have got angiotensin 2. Now this angiotensin 2 is the actual protein which brings the volume of GFR back to the normal, and this is done by three ways. So one is it binds, now this protein binds to the blood vessels in the nephron, that is efferent arteriole and efferent arteriole. Once it binds to the efferent and efferent arteriole, it makes them to constrict. So this is called vasoconstriction. So what happens in vasoconstriction? The lumen of the blood vessels decreases. When the lumen decreases, the blood pressure increases. So when the blood pressure increases, the rate of filtration also increases. Therefore, the volume of GFR increases. So this is one way of bringing back the volume to the normal. So this is done by angiotensin 2. So when angiotensin 2 binds to the blood vessels, it makes them to constrict. So the process is called vasoconstriction. When vasoconstriction takes place, the blood pressure increases. Due to increased blood pressure, the rate of filtration increases. And second one is, now angiotensin 2 goes to the cortex of the kidney. It is called as renal cortex, and it stimulates the cells in the renal cortex to produce aldosterone. So aldosterones are secreted by the cortex by the signal of angiotensin 2. So when the aldosterones are released, the nephrons reabsorb sodium ions from the primary urine. So as the sodium ions are reabsorbed, along with that, water will be reabsorbed, and this process is called as osmotic reabsorption. So as ions enter into the blood vessels from the renal tubule, the concentration of the ions increases. It becomes hypertonic. So as a result, water automatically moves from the renal tubules to the blood vessels. So water is entering, therefore the GFR volume is also increasing. And then, now the same protein, angiotensin 2, stimulates the pituitary glands to produce antidiuretic hormone. So antidiuretic hormone binds to the renal tubule and helps in the reabsorption of the water, so that the volume of the GFR increases. And the last thing it does is, it increases the thirst, so that the individual drinks more water and the volume in the body will be maintained. So these are the different ways in which angiotensin 2 brings the GFR rate to normal. So in this mechanism, renin and angiotensin is involved. So we call this mechanism as renin-angiotensin mechanism. And this is regulated by the juxtaglomerular apparatus present in the nephron.